like the first impression. As a business owner, I'm sure you're hearing that a lot. But this concept isn't strictly for in-person meetings. It's not just about your appearance, what you say in person. I believe it really applies to everywhere that you show up, and that includes your voicemail message. Yes, voicemail messages are important, even if you say, "Oh, I don't really listen to voicemail messages," or "Nobody uses them." Somebody's listening, right? When you're not answering the phone, somebody's listening. So I'm excited today to have voiceover artist Liz Drury here on Make It Click to talk about just that. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Christine.
So, Liz, as we were just chatting before we went live here, I learned a little bit more about you just a couple days ago, which I find fascinating as a voiceover artist. And I have to say, part of me over the years has said, "Ooh, gee, I could do that." Can you enlighten our listeners on what some of the training has been that you've had to go through that, well, maybe even you're still going through that
Mm.
makes you an expert on voice?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than a lot of people realise. As you'll have heard when we spoke earlier in the week, Christine, that there are so many different voiceover genres when you start to think about it. We hear recorded voices all over the place. That might be voicemail greeting is one example, but videos that we see on the internet and on social media. Um, Audio tours if we go to a museum, announcements, your sat nav, um, e-learning and online training. Recorded voices are all over the place, and every genre of voiceover is different. And what I learned during my training was how to use my voice effectively in those different situations, because the way that you deliver a radio commercial, for example, is very different to the way that you would deliver an online training course. So that takes a lot, of learning to start with, and the training covers how to really lift that copy off the page and make it sound appealing to the listener. Because the last thing anybody listening to, particularly something really long, like an e-learning course, for example, is to hear a monotonous voice that drones on and puts everybody to sleep. So that's that's something that you really don't want to do.
Yeah, so I guess I mean when I think of when you talk about the e-learning, I think about storytellers.
Mm.
As you're listening to people tell a story, how they deliver it plays such a huge role. And it's the same thing with whenever your voice is showing up. Um, so let's talk a little bit here about the voicemail messages that, yes, I know a lot of people think that just like email, oh, voicemail messages, yeah, people don't use them anymore. But as I said in my introduction, people are listening. So that is a first impression sometimes.
Mm.
What are some common mistakes that, let's just talk about that one, just that initial voicemail message, somebody initially calling you and the typical voicemail that we leave, "Sorry, I can't come to the phone right now." What is well, that's probably a mistake.
Well, I think possibly the main mistake is not having one. As you said, it might be the first impression that somebody gets of your business. So you want to make sure that you are giving an impression for a start, and that impression is a good one. So many people hate recording their voice, hate hearing the sound of their own voice when they hear it recorded, and so they think, "Oh, I'm not going to record a voicemail greeting." And there's a couple of problems with that. So if you don't have a voicemail greeting, what do people hear when they call you? And the first thing that might happen is maybe the phone just rings and rings and rings and nothing happens. And I like to give the example of, let's say that you're looking for a plumber or an electrician or any tradesperson to come to your house, and you don't personally know one. So you go to Google and you type in plumber, electrician near me, and a whole list will pop up. And you phone the first one on the list and it rings and rings and rings and rings. Well, are you going to wait and call that person back another day? No, because you need what they do. So you go to the next person on the list. So that first person has lost out on business because they didn't have a voicemail greeting. The second person on the list, let's say you call them and there is a voicemail greeting, but it's just the generic thing that came with their phone. So you're not actually sure that you phoned the right place because it doesn't say so. It just says, thanks for calling, please leave a message. And then you're thinking, well, do I want to leave my contact details on this answering machine? Because I'm not sure that that's the company I wanted to call. So you maybe won't leave a message and you'll go to the third person on the list, and they've got a nice cheery voicemail greeting that says, sorry, we can't come to the phone. We're busy dealing with customers at the moment, but if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. So you now know that you phoned the right person, you're happy to leave your details, and hopefully they'll call you back. So that's why you need one, really. You could be missing out on business if you don't.
Mm. I like how you said, and hopefully they'll call you back. That's the other part of it. It's you do have to check your voicemail because you could be missing out on business, and you have to respond in a timely manner. But yeah, that's fascinating. With some of those service providers. What about if you're a service provider, like the coaching industry? There's so many of our listeners out there that are coaches and whatnot. What are some of the mistakes that they might be making in their voicemail?
Well, I think again, maybe the biggest mistake is not to have one. And with something like coaching, which can be, really quite in depth and get really personal, the caller does want to know that they're leaving a message with you. That they might be uncomfortable leaving a message if you've just got the generic message that came with your system. And I think for coaches, I think it's probably quite important that you do your own. Obviously, that does people like me out of out of business. But I think when it's something like a coach and you're working one to one with people, people really need to hear you, because you're the person that they're going to be dealing with. So I've got a few top tips actually for recording a really good sounding message. And the first tip, it's ever so simple, but to smile while you're recording your message.
Mm.
Because, believe it or not, you can hear a smile in a recorded voice. Um, and I like to demonstrate this by, just reading something out when I'm smiling or not smiling, and people say, "Oh yes, you can hear the difference," and it just makes you sound warmer, more approachable, more friendly, and yet that's the impression that every coach wants to give, that they're going to be a nice person to work with. So that's my top tip number one. My second tip is to record your message as if you're talking to just one person, because it's only one person at a time who's hearing it. So you might be thinking, oh, so many people are going to hear this recorded message, and that's why I don't want to do it. But just imagine you're speaking to one person. And I say to people, try and have in mind who your ideal client is. Maybe you've already got an ideal client and you can picture them very clearly. So imagine that you're talking to them when you're recording your message. If you haven't yet maybe got your ideal client, then maybe think of a celebrity who you would like to be your client. And you could even go find a picture of that person and have a picture in front of you while you're recording your message, so that you are actually delivering it to that particular person. And it's amazing what difference that makes as well. And another tip is to think about some adjectives that you would like to be associated with your business. Is your business is it professional? Are you young and dynamic? Are you sympathetic? Have some of those adjectives in mind as you're recording, and that will also influence the way that your voice comes out. And again, this is an exercise that I like to do with people in the room. And I have a piece of copy printed out, and I will ask for a volunteer from the floor to come up, and I will give them the piece of copy, and I will give them an adjective, and I will ask them to really go over the top. So I might ask them to be really, really joyful, or really angry, or really upset. And then they deliver the piece of copy with this adjective in mind. And then we ask the people in the room, can you guess what the adjective was that I gave them? And a lot of the time that they can guess. The angry one is really quite funny. I mean, nobody's ever going to record an angry voicemail. That wouldn't win you any customers. But it's just a bit of fun, really, and showing that having an adjective in mind will influence how you read your copy. Another tip is to write your script out. because that's probably going to save you a lot of time in the long run. And and if you go wrong, obviously you can start again. It's not a live thing. You can record it as many times as you need to, but you'll record it less times if you've got it written down, because you'll think, I know what I want to say, and you'll start saying it, and think, oh, that didn't come out right, I'll do it again, and you start again, oh, it still wasn't right. But if you've got it written down, you're more likely to get it right. Maybe not the first time, but maybe the third or fourth time perhaps. So I would always recommend that people at least make some notes as to what they're going to say. Otherwise, you start recording and think, oh, what was the next thing I was going to say? And you end up doing it all over again. And the last tip is to record it in a quiet environment. And that might sound really obvious, but one of the things that I mean by quiet is an environment where there's not too much echo on your voice. So the worst places for recording are kitchens and bathrooms, which have got lots of hard surfaces, and your voice is just bouncing around and echoing off everything, and it can make it really quite indistinct on the recording. You think you're speaking really clearly, but the recording is picking up all those bouncy echoes back as well, and it won't sound so clear for the person on the other end of the phone. I mean, you don't have to go to town and have a recording studio like I have here, because your recording is going to go down a phone line and be very compressed anyway. But the more you can do to dampen the sound around, so you record in the bedroom or a living room where there's carpets and drapes and lots of soft furnishing that are going to absorb those echoes, that will sound much better. And if you haven't got a room where there's carpets, maybe you've got hard floors everywhere, you can try and mitigate that by having your recording device, and it might be you're recording straight onto your phone. And so surround your phone with cushions or pillows that are going to absorb that sound, and then have your face up close to it and record, so that the pillows and the cushions are absorbing the sound, and it's not bouncing off the floor and the walls and the ceiling. And you'll get a much better result that way.
Well, I appreciate that you talk about the quality. I'm very sensitive to audio and voice quality. My daughter is hearing impaired, so I've lived for 33 years. She's 33. With someone who does not hear like I do, and so I've just become so sensitive. And yes, people need to understand quality is important, and along with the quality of the recording, what about the tempo? Is there a recommended tempo, speed to it, and also the length of a voicemail message?
Yeah, I think you don't want to make it too long, because people aren't going to listen to it all. I mean, if you've got a business where customers might be put on hold for any length of time, and this maybe isn't relevant to a one-person business like I am, for example. But if you're in a slightly larger business, and maybe you have to put something on hold while you put them through to someone else, don't leave people in silence. That's another big tip, because people are thinking, am I still connected? Is there anybody still there? Is anyone actually going to answer my call? So at the very least, play them some music. And it must be royalty-free music. You can't play music that has copyright associated with it, or you're going to get yourself into big trouble. So play them some music, or even better, use that opportunity to tell them more about your business, about your products and services. And I've read a figure somewhere that between 15 and 20% of people who are on hold and hear those messages will go on and buy that product or service. So that's not a figure not to be sniffed at, really. And so it's a good opportunity for a little extra marketing that maybe you hadn't considered before.
Yeah.
And there was another part to your question, and I've forgotten what it was now.
We're talking about the tempo, the speed that you deliver it, and the length.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the main thing is not to rush, because and especially if you're really nervous about doing it, you might be speeding up just to get it out of the way and get it done quickly. But then people can't understand what you're saying. So do make a concerted effort to slow down a bit. And don't try and cram too much information in there. The main things to include are, thank you for calling, whatever business it is, or maybe your name if you are your business. So, as I am, say, thank you for calling Liz Drury. Say that you're sorry that you can't take the call right now, and try and sound sincere about it. and then tell them what to do next. So tell them to leave their name, their number, and a short message, and then tell them what you're going to do next, which is, I will call you back as soon as I can. And then thank them again for calling. So that's kind of the basic message. You might want to have an out of hours message that you put on overnight. And that could say something along the lines of, thank you for calling Liz Drury Voiceovers, for example. I'm currently closed, but my normal working hours are this to this. Please call back during this time, or leave a message after the tone. Again, you tell people what you want them to do. So you don't want them to be overly long messages. Even the on hold messages where you're talking about product or service, maybe 50 to 100 words. 150 words is about a minute of talking. That's far too long. Nobody's going to listen for a minute. So, try and keep it down to maybe sort of 50 words. Otherwise, they might get put through to some people. They've even heard the rest of the message, and then that was a waste of time.
So Liz, I would imagine people's voicemail messages are kind of like websites. They get built and then people don't look at them anymore. So how often do you update your voicemail message?
Well, I'm probably as guilty as everybody else of setting and forgetting, but I think that is particularly important for probably the larger businesses. If and especially if you're taking a break for any length of time. Maybe it's for vacation or it's for holidays. I would certainly update the out of hours message to say, we're now closed for Christmas and New Year, and we're open again on the whatever date in January, so that people know when to call you back. If for somebody like me, I generally answer my phone most of the time, because it is just me. So yes, I don't think I've actually updated my message since I first did it, since I got my phone.
How fascinating. Well, Liz, this has just been an awesome conversation here. It's something, that just fascinates me too. I mean, and there's so many more aspects of what you do that we could go on. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
So my website is pretty easy to find. I'm lizdrury.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you search for Liz Drury, voiceover artist. Same on Facebook. And I dip in and out of Twitter and Instagram, and my handle on there is @LizDruryVO. But yeah, my website has got all my contacts and my social media connections on there. So yeah, please come and find me.
And you have some fascinating examples of your work on there. I was listening to them. So Liz, one last question, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but when you think about your business and building your business, is there something that you learned, something that you started doing that really changed your business for you and really made it click? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think for me, it's been networking. Networking is something that I used to do before I was a voiceover artist. When I worked for an employer, they used to send me to business networking meetings. So that was great, because I was then aware of what went on in my local area in terms of business networking. And I think, building your network is so important. And it's never about the people that are in the room in front of you, but it's about their wider network as well. And the more people you can talk to, the more people that you can help, whether that's with your own business, or more likely by thinking about other people that you can connect with them with. What goes around comes around. The more you can do for other people, the more they're going to do for you. And so I found that networking has been a really great way to market what it is I do, to spread the word about what I'm doing. And if I go to an event locally now, I always get somebody who comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're the voiceover lady, aren't you?" Which is great. People recognize me and they remember what it is that I do.
Yeah. Well, yes, fast and connection, networking. Yes, it's so important. Well, Liz, again, thank you so much for being my guest today on Make It Click.